Oh, Landsman hat ihm Gitter angesucht in Kishkis, and it got into Fox News. Like, it's already international news that Trudeau is already attacking the Jews.
When they ask him a question, he doesn't have to answer the question.
No, he never answers to that.
It's always like that?
Yeah. Yeah. Unless it's like a friendly question. Sometimes they put up. Yeah. Not only is question period, you don't have to answer the question, they each get each other's questions beforehand. It's theater. Question period is theater.
Have you seen the clip of her?
Yesterday,
Yeah.
with the point of order, yeah, it was very good.
She doesn't look like your typical conservative. She's got one of those funny haircuts. And...
So I want to tell you something. I didn't like her. The reason why I didn't like her is because she was parachuted in to that riding to Thornhill by O'Toole against a very popular candidate who they had, and the reason why she was parachuted in is because O'Toole wanted to show that he's a leftist. In sie is van de Freiliche.
She's gay. I thought she was a little.
Sie is van de Freiliche.
Yeah.
Roos waarvan doe you to do. Gleich is op red.
Yeah. Okay. Regelen.
Und der Ribber hat ihr herangestippt, weil it called me diversity. Okay.
You see how much
Jewish
it helped?
isn't a good enough minority. Yeah, so she's able to give it to him good because she has all the mileage. She's very high on the totem pole of what's the word for it? Of disadvantaged communities. Okay, so let's see the Heilige Gemara. So yesterday we learned about the distinction between the Chagiga that was brought on Erev Pesach versus the normal Chagiga that's brought every Yom Tov on the first day of Yom Tov. The Chagiga that's brought on the first day of Yom Tov, that's the Raisa. But the Chagiga that's brought on the 14th day on Erev Pesach, just to supplement the Korban Pesach, so that it should be Nechal ala Soiva, that the Gemara says, Alma Katsovar, Chagigas Arbos Lav the Raisa, and it could be brought fully of Meiser money. This is actually a very, very big shaila. What it means Lav Dairaisa, because the Rambam learns, according to most Shitas, that the Chagigas Arbosar is Dairaisa. It's not a chiyuv. You're not mechuyev to bring it to Dairaisa, but it's a carbon rishus of Dairaisa. And we need to go one step further. Rashi told us yesterday that why is the Chagigas Arbosar an item at all? It's because the Korban Pesach has to be Nechal ala Soiva. And if you have a lot of oichlid, but not a big Korban Pesach, then you're going to need more meat so that when you eat the Korban Pesach, it should be Nechal ala Soiva. But even that a Korban Pesach needs to be Nechal ala Soiva, that's also a Shaila, if that's the Rice or the Rabbanan. Then the Yerushalmi, it's mashma that it's the Rabbanan. And the reason why it has to be Nechal ala Soiva is because if someone came to eat the Korban Pesach and he was starved, it's likely that he might break a bone. And there's an Isur Daraisa to break a bone. The Etzem boy, you're not allowed to break a bone in the Korban Pesach. Someone's starved, he might decide to chew on the bone and extract the marrow. And therefore, it's a Rabbanon could be that the Korban Pesach is Nechal Soiva, but there are those who learn that it's a Daraisa. But the Chagigas Arbosar, according to the Rambam, is Daraisa. It's a Daraisa Rishus, which is like an interesting gather for a mitzvah. You're saying something very good, David, but you're in mute, so I can't hear you.
You know, it was good. There are very few of those Daraisa Rishus categories. Do
you know of any others besides this?
Yeah, I know a few others. One is a Goyal Adam. Right, he's allowed to kill the guy, but there's not a chiyuv to kill the person, right?
So his enthusiasm in doing it isn't because it's a mitzvah.
Right. But I don't think he has to. Even Shluach HaKhan, I'm not sure you have to, if you come across that you have to do it. Things of that nature, but this is a whole other, this doesn't fit exactly into that box. Anyway, Just commenting.
Okay. I'm happy that you spoke out because I never knew there was such a thing as a mitzvah say deraisa. It's rishus. Now makes sense. Okay, beautiful. Amar. So let's drill down a little bit. So it's probably could die for us to just quickly review the brisa that we're focused on over here. So the brisa says over here. Let me see if I can get my camera to focus. Okay. Ditnan, no, it's not over here. Oilois nedar medavis b'moed bois b'yomtov einen bois boilis re'ia ba afilu b'yomtov uchshiba in ba element achulun. This was the modified version of our Mishnah. V'shalmei simcha boin af min ha'maiser, and shalmei simcha come from maiser. The chagigas yomtov rishon shal pesach. Okay, so let's see what the Gemara says. So Zok the Gemara, you're allowed to bring the Chagiga from the Maiser. So the Chagiga that you'll bring on the first day of Pesach, on the first day of Sukkot, or on Shavuos, you could bring it to Maiser. Frank the Gemara, how could you allow that? Amai davar shebechayvahu. There's a chiyuv to bring a carbon Chagiga, and we learned that the chol davar shebechayva. It could only be brought from chulin, and not from meiser. Amar ula and for ula, but toifel. Toifel means you supplement. And Rashi says mechaber meiser imachulin. Maybe you supplement the meiser with chulin. Ufligi amiroi ketzet toifel. And the question is, how do you supplement? How does the supplement work? And the more going to get into that in a second. What was very interesting to note is that the carbon chagiga is a standard carbon shlomim. It's a standard carbon shlomim, and the zrika of a standard carbon shlomim is shtei matanis and arba. Two matanis, one on each opposite corner of the mizbeach. The matnas dam for meiser behema is only one matnas dam. So frek the minchas chinuch. How can you use the Meiser Behema for the Shlomim of Chagiga if the Matnas Dam is different? That's the Shaila of Minchas Chinuch. And he doesn't answer. But Reb Moshe Sternbach, right, he wrote I forgot the name of the sefer, but he writes that could be his chiddush. It could be that since Meiser you're sort of being makashit because you're counting out the 10 animals that are meiser. So when you're makashit, if you have in mind when you're being makashit, you're making it, you're going to be using it for a shlomim. So then could be it would have two zrikas. That was just a suggested chiddush that he offered. But otherwise, there is a little bit of a problem. Is that the matnas dam is different between a regular carbon shlomim and meiser behema. So Raza mentioned over here meiser behema. How does meiser behema work? Oh, that's actually going to be a little bit later. I'll save that insert for later. So now the question is when you're supplementing chulin with meiser, exactly how is it done? So Chizki Amar toiflin behema lebehema. The first animal you bring for your chagiga has to be purely chulin. If you want to bring additional animals because you want more meat, then those you could bring from meiser. So Rashi explains, Chizki Amar behema lebehema, you have a lot of family, and one chagiga will not be enough to satisfy everybody in your family. One chagiga has to be brought from chulin money, and then you can add on more chagigas with my mois meiser sheni. V'aval pi shakulan habois b'yom rishon shem chagiga aleim, and even though all of the karbanos that are brought on the first day is a carbon chagiga, not just a generic shlomim, you're still allowed to do it with meiser because kvar yotza yidei chayva b'rishoina min ha'chulin. Since the very first animal you brought from chulin. I'm sorry.
As long as you buy one full behema,
That's how Chizkiah learns. That's right. As long as one full behemoth is chulin, the first behemoth is chulin, you're going to be okay. That's what Chizkiah said. And he also said, "Ain't typhon mois mois." You can't use mois mashusheni. You have $10 of mois chulin, but an animal costs $20. So you take mois mashusheni and you combine it with a furl 20, and now you're buying one behemoth. But this one behemoth is not purely chulin anymore. Rather, this behemoth itself is a mixture of chulin and mashusheni because the monies that you used were mixed. That would not be allowed. It has to be pure. The first behemoth has to be pure mice.
And if you could buy a full behemoth with $10, now you want to buy a bigger behemoth for $20.
So according to Chizkiah, you can't do that. According to Chizkiah, the first animal has to be purely chulin. Zok Rashi, vein teufel mois lemois. Liknois behema gedola. To buy a bigger animal, which is exactly what Moti suggested. What if I want to buy a bigger animal? Before we finish Rashi, let's just look at Rabbi Yochanan. Rabbi Yochanan says, "Teufel mois lemois." What you're better off doing is having every carbon should have some chulun in it. So therefore, better mix the money, pool the money together, and then buy behemoths. But ain't teufel behema lebehema. You're not teufel behema lebehema because in the later behemoths are going to be pure meiser, and that's not good. Let's see Rashi. Rabbi Yochanan Lamar is chazal shaper tvei yitzias yidei chevosei min achulin kishemevi behema shlema min achulin. According to Chizkiah, he prefers that the first behemoth should be purely from chulin. Lamar, and according to Rabbi Yochanan, is chazal shaper tvei kishechulin murabin im kol achilosa. So that every animal should have some element of chulun in it, which is sort of the chiyuv of chagiga. L'kaman yalef lo mikroi, the mutter liyostai. We're soon going to learn the psukim. Where do you know you're allowed to do this b'chlal? We're soon going to learn it out of psukim. But I'll call you have a machlokes here between Chizkiah and Rabbi Yochanan. Is what's better? Is it better to have one pure mitzvah, or is it better to have a whole bunch of smaller mitzvahs?
Say that the mixture that each step that you're taking could be or each step could be
Here, yep. And as a matter of fact, let me ask you a shayla. You have $100. Are you better off giving $1 to 100 aniyim, or is it better to research one moisid very carefully and give all $100 to one place? So there's actually a shayla. It's mashma from the Rambam that it's better. There's a ma'isa mitzvah. It's better to give multiple little ones, but there are those who learn that you're better off giving one big one. And there's a sefer that was written by Rabbi Yosef Engel before the war, and it's called Lekach Toiv, and he lists off a whole bunch of shaylas based on the following yesod. What is better, kamus or echus? Are you better off doing more smaller mitzvahs or one greater mitzvah? And one of his shaylas are, if somebody needs to eat meat on Shabbos because he's a choyle masum, and we have treifa meat for him, so is he better off eating treifa meat, but then every kezayis that he eats is a new isser, it's an isser lav of eating nevela, treifa, or whatever the lav would be, or is it better to be over a chi of skila of shchita and bishul, but that's only going to be done once, and then the rest of his eating will be better. So Rabbi Yosef Engel has a shayla. What is better? Do you look at the quantity or do you look at the quality? Do you look at the concentration, which is the eiches, or the kamas, the amount of times he's being over and over? And they bring different rayas. I believe the Ran says that you're better off doing the shchita and the bishul, and there's just one isser, and then, even though it's a more serious isser, better than doing multiple isurim for every kazayis that he eats. So he got many haskamas. Yeah, but the question is, there's two ways to be able to deal with that. You can either have tray for meat, or you can cook, or you can. That's because a yid will do it better. But what if it's determined that the tray for meat will be just as beneficial to the chayla sheish b'sakana as kosher meat? The reason why it's better to do with a Yid is because a Yid will get sich Ibram more and he'll do a better job. Because that's what Shlomo told me when he told me to drive up to North Bay on Shabbos. Right? He said, I said, what can I do that a guy can't do better? A guy knows knows the back roads, he knows the woods. He says, a Yid cares more. So that's those who learn that's the same child. So this fellow, not a fellow, Yosy Engel, he wrote a sefer called. He got many different haskamas from Beit Kachol. And one of the haskamas, I forgot who it was from, he offers another example of such a case, and he brings this Gemara. One of the haskamas brings this Gemara. The machlokes between Chizkiya and Rabbi Yochanan is that same shaila. Are you better having a little bit of chulin in each chagiga, or are you better having it concentrated in one chagiga? It says, Dr. Gemara, Tanya Kavasa the Chizkiya. Chizkiya held that you should have a pure behema. The first behema should be purely chulin. And Tanya Kavasa Rabbi Yochanan. And we also have a brayso that supports Rabbi Yochanan that it's better that every behema that you eat, as chagiga, should have some chulin mixed into it. Tanya Kavasa Rabbi Yochanan. It says misas. Let's see the pasuk where it says misas. It says vasisa chag shavuos l'Hashem Elokecha misas nidvas yodcha asher titeh. So misas indicates that it has to be chulin, and the Gemara is going to tell us shortly how we know that. But we see that it has to be chulin. There are those who ask, this halacha is negeya to Sukkot and Pesach as well. Why did the Torah tell us this halacha that it has to be brought from chulin dafka b'chag Shavuos? So one of the Mefarshim say, very simple. It's because a person comes up, normally when he comes up to Yom Tov, he comes up with tons of Meiser Sheni money that he has to spend, right? So Bishla on Sukkot, on Pesach, he's there for a whole week. So he'll use pure chulin. He's more ready to use pure chulin for the Chagiga, and then for the rest of the week, he'll have an opportunity to spend his Meiser Sheni money. But in Shavuos, he's only there one day. So he wants to be able to blow out his Meiser Sheni money. So there would be a bigger taiva for someone to want to use chulin, to want to use Meiser Sheni. So the Torah tells us, b'dafka by Chag Shavuos, even there, you should be careful to use only mois or chulin. So Tanya Kavos Rabbi Yochanan misas milamed. This teaches us, the brayso says, she'adam maybe chevasei minachulin. You have to bring it from chulin. Cannot use meiser money. Uminayin shimrotza le'arei. How do you know if you wanted to mix in? You could mix in. And Rashi tells us using the word mixing in seems to say that the animal has mixed chulin and meiser, which would indicate, like Rabbi Yochanan, that you use the money of chulin and the money of meiser together to buy a behema. Talmud Leimer, how do you know you're allowed to do this? Kasher yivarecha Hashem Elokecha. So this pasuk of Kasher yivarecha Hashem Elokecha, according to Basil, teaches us that the Korban Chagiga could be a blend of chulin and meiser. It doesn't have to be pure. So we have an overarching rule that says you're never allowed to use moist meiser for anything that's a chiyuv of a mitzvah. But by Chagiga, there's an exception because the Torah says, "Kasher yavrecha Hashem Elokecha." Here, you're allowed to mix in some meiser sheni money to supplement your chulin money. Tanya Kavos the Chizkiya. We also have a brayso that seems to indicate that you're not allowed to mix the money together. Rather, the first animal has to be purely chulin. Again, misas, the same pasuk by Shavuos. Malamed shad maybe chevasei minachulin. Beishamai says yom rishon minachulin. The first day has to be chulin. You can't velech from the meiser. That seems to indicate the first day is pure chulin, and afterwards you can use meiser. You don't see like chizki in the first brayso because it says shem rotza la'arev ma'arev. That seems like Rabbi Yochanan. You're mixing the money together, right? So the first brayso is a right to Rabbi Yochanan. The second brayso is a right to chizki. Even on the very first day, you're allowed to have behemoths of meiser, as long as the first behemoth that you have, and Rashi is achilu rishono, hashter shokadaitach behema la'atzma, v'yivyenna al shulchan rishon. So the first animal that you eat should be purely from chulin. You can't velech from the meiser. So this brayso seems to indicate that the first behemoth has to be purely chulin, which would be a support to Chizkiya. V'shar kol yemais Pesach adam yoytzi yedei chevasai b'meiser behema. So up until now, we've been talking about Meiser Sheni. You can use Meiser Sheni money to purchase your Chagiga, even on the first day, right? According to Rabbi Yochanan, even the first carbon could have Meiser Sheni mixed into it, and according to Chizkiah, according to Basil, even on the first day, the second animal you can buy out of Meiser Sheni. But Meiser Behema, you're not allowed to use the first day at all. But the Shar Kol Meiser Pesach, only on the rest of Pesach from the second day and on, Adam Yosy de Chivasai, or Meiser Behema, you can even use Meiser Behema for your Chagiga. Not for your Chagiga. It's not Chagiga anymore. Then it's already Shalmei Simcha. The Chagiga was only on the first day. So that's what Rashi says. V'shar kol Meiser Pesach she'enon ela Simcha. That's not a mitzvah Chagiga anymore. That's just for Simcha. Then Adam Yosy b'Meiser Behema im Yeshlai. The Chol Shekein Shekoin Shlom b'Meiser Sheni. Of course, you're allowed to use Meiser Sheni, but you can even do that on the first day.
According to Shammai, from a technical point of view, you're not allowed to bring that korban on the first day.
Which carbon? Meiser Behema? Well, Basil says also, everybody agrees Meiser Behema you cannot bring the first day. We're going to soon see. We don't know yet why. We're going to soon see. The Gemara is going to say. Zok the Gemara, my timer. Why can't you use Meiser Behema the first day? What's wrong with that? Omar Bashi, Dilma Osi Lasur B'Yom. If we allow you to use a carbon of Meiser Behema on Yom Tov Rishon, which is Yom Tov. See, normally the first day, every year the first day is Kodesh, you can't do Malacha. Chalamot, you can do Malacha. So if we allow you to bring a carbon of Meiser Behema on the first day, we're afraid you'll actually make the Meiser Behema on the first day. And that we don't want. Chalamot, you're allowed to do Meiser Behema, but you're not supposed to do Meiser Behema on Yom Tov. Why? What's wrong with making Meiser Behema on Yom Tov? Why aren't you allowed to make Meiser Behema on Yom Tov? What's the problem? So the Gemara be Evshir L'Asher B'Yom Tov. You know why? Mishum Sakarta. Because the 10th animal that went through the gate, they would mark with red paint. And that's Sheveya, and you're not allowed to paint on Yom Tov, and that is why you're not allowed to take Meiser Behema on Yom Tov, and therefore you're not even allowed to bring already a pre-Meiser Behema, something that was already Meiser Behema, you're not allowed to bring that for a carbon on Yom Tov, because we're afraid someone will actually be Maaser and then paint it. So Toshus asked the Kash over here, why do I need to krich, to aser, taking Meiser Behema on Yom Tov, because I'm going to paint it? You're not allowed to be makdish things on Yom Tov. So why doesn't it say that minei ubei? It's aser to make Meiser Behema on Yom Tov. So Toshus has some interesting svars. I think it's Rabbi Chanan. I don't know. I don't think this is Rabbi Chanan Wasim, but Rabbi Chanan asked the Kasha in one of the Bali Toshus, and he asks typically because you can't be makdish. So he offers a couple of different terutzim. One of the terutzim he offers is that being makdish something is only nisur d'Rabbanan. Painting is a nisur d'Oraisa. That's one shot. Another shot he said is when you're making something into Meiser Behema, you're not really making something hektish. Really, every 10th animal has to be kodesh already. That is a chiyuv in the Torah that every 10th animal is kodesh. You're just declaring which one it is. Could be that's not as chomer as taking something that's purely chulin and being makdish. That's why the Gemara chapton sakarta, because that's clearly an issue deraisa. So this is where Pam asks a very good question. Why is it that when we give Meiser Behema, we have to put all the animals through a narrow passage and count them 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and number 10 we mark with the red paint? Why can't you count up your whole flock and see how many you have and then take 10%? It's the same thing. Why does it have to be this way? Zokar Pam, beautiful. If you had 1,000 animals and then you have to give 100 animals to tzedakah, shui, that's a lot of money to tzedakah. How am I going to do it? But if you count it, 1 is mine, 2 is mine, 3 is mine, 4 is mine, 5 is mine, 6 is mine, 7 is mine, 8 is mine, 9 is mine. No, 10 I can give, 1 I can give to the Rebbeinu Shalom. If a person should realize how much he has, how much the Rebbeinu Shalom gave him, then it's easier to give the 1 away. Zok Tomar Vayter. My mashma, the high misas, lishna the chulin. Where do you see that this misas is lishna the chulin? Tichsiv, this is such a geschmacka line. Tichsiv vayosam hamelech achashverosh mas ala oretz. Mas is a tax. When you pay tax, you can't double it. I'd love to be able to make my my payroll tax submission this month and tell the government this $100 that I'm giving you should also be used for GST, and it should also be used for income tax. It should also cover all my taxes. Sentences in jail you can serve concurrently, but you can't use the same money to pay multiple taxes. Each one has to be your own pure chulun money. So that's how we know that misas means it has to be purely chulun. It's like the person who wanted to pay for tax. I owe you $10,000, so I'm going to give you this bolt. And I know that you spend $10,000 on the bolt. The government, when they buy bolts, they spend $10,000. I owe $20,000. Here's 2 bolts. That doesn't work. It has to be chulun money. Okay. Zok the head gemor weiter. Yisrael yoytzin yidei chevason b'nedarim u'nedavos. Yisrael could be yoytzin schiyah, and we said it's referring to shalmei simcha. It's referring to the meats that they have to eat. Is b'nedarim u'nedavos. So Dave Zolti asked a question a couple of days ago. He asked, since the makar of basar is v'samachta b'chagecha, and it's referring to shalomim. So nowadays, where we don't have a Beis Hamikdash, we can't bring a carbon shalom, is there still a chiyuv simcha? Is there still a chiyuv to eat meat? So that's something that we're going to learn about now. Tanu Rabbanan, v'samachta b'chagecha l'rabbis kol minei smachos l'simcha. You have to have a lot of different types of simcha. Rashi says, v'samachta kol ha-simchas v'mashma, it's mashma, all of the simchas. All they want is simcha. The Omar Mar and Mar taught us, ain't simcha ela b'basar. B'hai basar, so v'samachta b'chagecha l'rabbis kol minei simcha l'simcha v'kadam v'chachamim Yisrael yoytzi yidei chevason v'nedarim u'nedavos v'mashav hema. All we care is that there should be basar. How you come to that basar is irrelevant. So therefore, even if you have pre-existing nedarim, nedavos, or mashav hema, the fact is that that's meat that could be eaten that will create simcha, and therefore you're yoytze the mitzvah of simcha with that meat. Like Kohanim, they have it much easier. They don't have to schlep any animals up. They get a chelik of everybody else's animals that everybody else slept up. So while everybody had to pay excess baggage fare on their flight up to Yerushalayim, the Kohanim were able to travel with just the hand baggage because everything else was shipped to them. You always think to yourself, when we go on the trip, we drive to New York, we have to pack up a whole cooler of food and drinks and the heat and air, and then you pull up the rest area, and you just go, they don't pack anything. They come, they sit down at McDonald's, they order, they have everything ready for them. And we have to schlep. So the Kohanim were that way as well. We had to schlep our animals up to Yerushalayim, and the Kohanim came with their hand baggage, they traveled light, and then they came to us, and they took their chelik. The Kohanim, the chatas v'osham, because they got the meat from the chatas v'osham, u'bechar, u'bechaz v'shayt, they got the bechar, they got the chaz v'shayt, shlomim, they did okay. Yochel, af, you might think that you could be mekayim the mitzvah of simcha with oifos and menachos, and I would say chicken when I think of oifos, but it has to be an oif that was brought on the mizbeach. Tamadoymar, v'samachta b'chagecha. The simcha has to be b'chagecha. What does that mean, b'chagecha? It has to be similar to the carbon of chagiga.
I just want to clarify, Yosy. I'd like to clarify. So my question was, it seemed that the Gemara was defining what simcha was, and their definition was of bringing the carbon. So that was really my question or comment. So according to that, these days we don't have that possibility. So therefore, there shouldn't be a mitzvah once
that's right. And
right.
Somebody
so
agrees
now
somebody agrees with you.
Ein simcha ela b'basar. That's doesn't fit
Not
into
done
that.
yet. We still have more information. The Gemara is still
No.
offering up some more information. So we dash misha chagiga ba'amahem. The only thing that creates simcha are something that a carbon chagiga can be brought from. And Tosfos tells us, and Rashi tells us, that by the Chagiga it says v'layolim chelev chagi, meaning the chag, the Chagiga has chelev, which means it must be a behema. That's how we know that the simcha of basar is with a behema. Yatu elu she'ein Chagiga ba'mehem. You cannot bring a carbon Chagiga with a mincha nor with a knife. So that is the first shot, which seems to link it to a carbon, and therefore it's logical to argue that nowadays, when we don't have the Beis Hamikdash, maybe there is no chiyuv of basar. But Rabbi Ashi has another pshat. Rabbi Ashi Amar mi b'samachta nafta. it's v'samachta, and we all know that there's no real simcha unless you have meat. Show me the beef. That's the simcha. Mi v'samachta nafka. Yatzu elu shein bam simcha. No one has the same geschmack in a piece of pizza like they have in a geschmacka sizzling rib steak with the crosshatch markings of the grill on it. So it's logical. So there are those achronim who learn that is the machlokes Reb Ashi and the first shita. According to Reb Ashi, even nowadays where we don't have karbonis, there's still a mitzvah of simcha because of the meat itself. But the first shita held that the simcha was dafka eating the carbon, and that doesn't apply nowadays. So exactly your thoughts is
you're right, but I think there's another problem. In the Teichacha, it says, Kasher lo yavati Hashem besimcha, right? So it's not that they didn't bring karbonis. That definition of simcha is something completely different.
Right. So simcha could be defined differently. So you're asking, how does Reb Ashi define simcha? The first shita, it's compared to the Chagiga. But Reb Ashi is saying simcha alone means meat. It cannot mean meat in the Teichacha.
Right.
There means a simcha in the heart. Rav Ashi, being that Rav Ashi doesn't need the bechagecha to teach you that in simcha ela b'basar, so what does he use that pasuk to teach us? So the Gemara hahula chadra of Daniel bar Katina, Damar of Daniel bar Katina, Amarav minayin she'ein noisin noshin b'mayid. How do you know that you're not allowed to make nesuin b'mayid? Avada kedushin you're allowed to make shaloi yichtafen achar shon shel chaper. But how do you know that you're not supposed to make weddings on Chalamoid? So that's how we know that a noshim b'moed, and it's brought down halacha that even if someone gets engaged on Yom Tov, you should serve a little leg brofen, but you should not make a sit-down meal for a vort on Chalamoid or on Yom Tov. The problem is, what about the first shita who uses b'chagecha to teach you that you need to eat meat from a carbon? How are they going to learn that ein noshim b'mayit? So Tosfos tells us that when we learned the Gemara, we learned that there were other reasons for it, such as ein ma'arvin simcha b'simcha, because there was that reason. There was the reason that's going to stop people from being oisik and puravu, because people are always going to push off their weddings to Yom Tov when they're making shudus anyways. So there's other svaras where we learn she'ein noshim b'mayit. Kazak the Heilige Mishnah. This is going to actually address a little bit what Dave Zalti asked yesterday as well, is what if I can't even afford my one Chagiga? How do you deal with that? So the Mishnah says as follows. Someone who has a big family, but few nechasim. So I think Shmuel Erman sent me a couple of days ago a small TikTok video. Chassid sitting, and he says, "Wo ist der Chilik zwischen einer, was hat $3 million or the 3 million Kinder?" Oh, what is it? Oh, wo ist der Chilik zwischen einer, was hat 13 Kinder or the 13 million? So he says, there was at the 13 million will mehr. So, Mishiyesh Oichlin Meruben, he has the 13 children, but in the Chasim Ma'atim. So the halacha is, maybe Shlomim Meruben, out of the money that he has, he brings more korban shlomims, which net him more meat to feed his family. And they'll go easy on the oilers because he can't afford to bring too many korbanos. What if it's nechasim merubim va'oichlin mu'atim? What if he has a lot of money, but he doesn't have enough family? So I would have said, let him give some of that money to the needy person who needs it. But the Mishnah doesn't say that. The Mishnah says, maybe oilers merubos who shlomim mu'atim. What if Sai he doesn't have a lot of people and Sai he doesn't have a lot of money? So this addresses the shaila that they asked, what if someone doesn't have money? What does he do? So for that, this still has to come up with the bare minimum, al zen nemar, mo kesef, and shtei kesef. That is the bare minimum, and I guess that's such a small amount that's affordable to everybody. So the threshold, the bottom threshold, the minimum requirement is small enough that anybody can afford. What about Zev Zemarubin? What if somebody has Kanaina, a big, beautiful family, and he has a lot of money, Baruch Hashem, to support him? Zareinu vichaspenu, Yarbeh Kachol, al zenemar, ish kemat nasyadoi, kevirkas Hashem alekech hashinos anlach. He can bring karbonis, whatever he needs. We should all be zoiche We should all be zoicha to zev v'zeh merubim. We should have big, beautiful, healthy families with all the money in the world, the chaspeinu Yarbeh Kachol, all the money in the world to be able to take care of them properly. Zok Tehillah Gemara. Shalomim merubim. Mehechi maisi. Halastly. We're talking about somebody who has nechasim muatim. And the Mishnah suggested, bring a lot of shlomims. That's like, let them eat cake. If he doesn't have money, where is he supposed to get the shlomim merubim from? On Mabchista, what they do is, toifel umevi par gadol. Well, you know what he could do? What he could do is, everybody, even someone who has nechasim muatim, has meiser. He can use the meiser to buy the meat. So this chagiga that he's bringing, he could be toifel and bring a par gadol. So this sounds very much like Rabbi Chisda is saying exactly what Rabbi Yochanan said, that you put the money together, you put the money of chulin together with the money of meiser, and you buy a big animal. That's what this seems to be saying. Amar Rabbi Sheshes, so Rabbi Sheshes asked Rabbi Chisda, why are you saying that your teufel mois, lemois, and you buy one big animal? Don't we have another option? Why don't you buy one animal that's pure meiser, pure chulin, and then the rest of the animals buy pure meiser, which was the approach of Chizkiah. Exactly what is Rabbi Sheshes asking Rabbi Chisda? If his question to Rabbi Chisda is as follows: Harei amru teuflin behema lebehema, avoloi mois lemois. If you're telling me that Rabbi Sheshes is taking on Chizkiah's position that you're only allowed to be teufel behema lebehema, but he disagrees with Rabbi Yochanan, and you're not allowed to be teufel mois lemois, so then Rabbi Sheshes' question and Rabbi Chisda should have been, ain't teufel mois lemois. He shouldn't have said, why aren't you teufel behema lebehema? He holds you're not allowed to be teufel money to money. So he should have said, I hold like Chizkiah, and you cannot be teufel mois lemois. So Rabbi Sheshes' kasha cannot be that. It cannot be that Rabbi Sheshes is taking the position of Chizkiah and he's arguing with Rabbi Chisda, who's taking the position of Rabbi Yochanan, because his question doesn't show that. Elahachi Amarle. This is what Rabbi Sheshes must have meant when he was arguing with Rabbi Chisda. And he's meant Harei Amru Af Teuflin Behema Lebehema. Maybe what Rabbi Sheshes is saying is, why are you telling me, Rabbi Chisda, that the only option is to put money together and buy a bigger behema, which is the position of Rabbi Yochanan? What about the position of Chizkiah? Why can't you do that? Why can't you have both options? Maybe you can have both options, and maybe you can also be teufel behema lebehema. So, frankly, if that's the case, then Rabbi Sheshes disagrees both with Rabbi Yochanan and Chizkiah, because he's saying both methods work. Come on, the like Chizkiah, the like Rabbi Yochanan. So now, are you telling me that Rabbi Sheshes is taking a position that's not agreeing with anybody? V'chitema amayroyu the pligi must nice a like pligi. Now the problem with being like Chizkiah and like Rabbi Yochanan, that's not a problem. You're allowed to argue on amayroyu, but the problem is we brought a brisa down. One was Tanakavos of the Chizkiah that says that it's dafka, a full animal has to be a chulin, and then we had another brisa that was dafka like Rabbi Yochanan that said ma'ariv. So you can't take a position that agrees neither with brisa A or brisa B. Who the plea, but masnais alay plea. If you want to say that no, the brises aren't arguing. What do you mean the brises aren't arguing? Didn't we just bring one tani kavos of Yochanan, tani kavos of Chizkiah? So Rashi explains to us that the brisa that says ma'ariv, it doesn't say that you can't have one pure animal of chulin. So let's see what it says. Alva masnaisa in Rashi, the isinol il tanya kavos the mar loy pligi b'mois ella b'behema. Maybe the whole machloikas between the two brises is if you're allowed to have one animal that's pure chulin or not, that's pure meiser, or one animal that's pure chulin. Because maybe the haktik atani imrotzala ariv, the first brisa that we brought as a right to Rabbi Yochanan, that imrotzala ariv. Hudaka Omer Moyis Dafka. That brisa says that you're only allowed to be ma'ariv. You're only allowed to put money together and buy one animal with the Moyis Chulin and Maisha Murav and Zevazeh. Abel Idach Masnisa, but the second brisa which we brought as proof to Chizkiah, maybe the second brisa holds Sarvale Bain Moyis Bain Behema. Maybe the second brisa agrees to both. And the whole shaila,
my.
because maybe you need to have a little bit of chulin in each animal. Maybe that's not what. Maybe everybody. I mean, you don't need to. That would be allowed. Everybody holds that would be allowed. But by behemoth, there's certain behemoths that have nothing, that have no chulin in it. So if you want to claim that it's only ma'oich ma'roim, but masnais toli pligi, and I have the second brisa that agrees that you're allowed to be ma'ariv both ways, it can't be, because the second brisa says beferish, v'katani achila rishoina min achulin. If it says achila rishoina min achulin, so that means Rashi says because of the daitach tasuda bar rishoina al shochan by kulam achulin. So you see that there's a machlokes brises. So how could you, Reb Sheshes, come along and hold it both? You either have to hold like brisa A or brisa B. So Gemara, my achila rishoina. What does the brisa mean when it says achila rishoina? All it means is sheer the may achila rishoina milachul. Maybe all the brisa means is that your teufel moist together. You know, it's not a separate animal. You actually have chulin and meiser that together purchase the animal, but you have to have enough chulin money in there that it could have bought a whole animal. So, for instance, if you hold like Basilo, that you need 2 mois for the chagiga, and you bought an animal for 10 mois, as long as 2 mois were chulin, it will be good. So therefore, it's possible that that second brisa holds that both methods are allowed, and that was the position that Reb Sheshes took. Reb Chisda took the position of Rabbi Yochanan, and Reb Sheshes took the position that holds both like Rabbi Yochanan and like Chisda. Okay, Zok the Gemara. Amar Ula, Amar Ish Lakish. What happens if hifrish eser behemus lechagigas? You were mafish 10 animals for your carbon chagiga. Now, normally you're supposed to be makrib your carbon chagiga on the first day, right? And the rest of the days are tashlumin for the first day. If you, for some reason you couldn't bring them. So what happens if you were mafish 10 behemus lechagigas, right? And what happened was hikriv chomish b'yom tov rishon, and you were makayim the mitzvahs chagiga on the first day of Yom Tov, and 5 karbanos were brought. Are you allowed to bring more chagiga the next day, or is there a problem about Taisa? You can't be yoyed to the mitzvah chagiga twice. The mitzvah chagiga is once. So are you allowed to or not? So zokt Reish Lakish chayzu makriv chomish yom tov sheni. You are allowed to be makriv the other 5 yom tov sheni, and there's no problem about Taisa. This is how Rashi learns pshat in this Gemara. Taisa learns pshat in this Gemara is that it's still considered a carbon, and therefore you're allowed to be makriv on the last day of Yom Tov, which is also kaidish. You don't have to do it only in Chalamoid. But let's focus on Rashi. Rashi says the shaylas is about Toshim. Since you were makayim the mitzvah with the first 5 on day 1, are you allowed to now bring more chagigas, or is it a problem about Toshim? Once you finish with the 5 karbonis, you can't bring the other 5 because that would be a problem of Baltois. Amar Baba, please. There's no machlokes between Yarbeh and Reish Lakish. They're referring to different scenarios. Kan bestam, kan b'mafarish. Bestam means, Rashi says, im hefrishon stam. If you were just mavish them, then einoi chayzu makrivan, you're not allowed to be makriv the next 5, because that'll be baltosh. But if it was mafarish, and Rashi said that means, Amar behedya, l'yom rishon ani mafarish kulam. What if you specifically said, I want them all to be brought only on the first day? So you're clearly not trying to be Mekayim the mitzvahs chagiga twice. You want to all do it once. But the problem is you, for some reason, you couldn't finish it. So therefore, it's not a problem because you made it very clear that all 10 were one big carbon that was supposed to be brought on day 1. So frankly, the stam where we say there would be a problem of Baal Tosef, what exactly was the case? If the reason why you weren't makriv all 10 is because you ran out of time and they were only able to be makriv 5, well, why would that be Baal Tosef? Hi, the loya krivinu, the lekashos behind. He really did plan to be makriv them all on day 1, which wouldn't have been Baal Tosef. They just ran out of time. So why would you say that's a problem? Baal Tosef. Or maybe it's speaking, or you didn't have enough people to eat, so you didn't check because you didn't have enough people to eat. You didn't want it to become nicer. Well, hi, the krivinu, the less loichlin. So once again, it's not because he wanted to be Mekayim the mitzvah chagiga twice. There was some technical issue that got involved. So why would it be Baal Tosef? There were no technical problems that would have prevented him from being makriv the second set of 5 karbanos the first day. He just decided that he wants to wait for the second day. since he didn't makriv the last 5 on the first day of Yom Tov, when he should have, Shemamina, Shiyuri Sharinu, you see, he's purposely leaving it over because he thinks he could be Mekayim the mitzvah of Chagiga twice. And that's Baltaisim. And it's Mistaber to say that way. The Chiyasa Rav and Rabbi Yochanan, Hifrish Esher Behemis the Chagigasoi, Hikiv Chamish B'Yom Tov Rishon, Chayzu Makriv Chamish B'Yom Tov Sheni. So this is exactly the opposite position that Rabbi Yochanan took a minute before. Earlier we quoted Rabbi Yochanan saying you cannot be Mafresh the second 5 the next day. You cannot be Makriv the second 5 the next day. Here Rabbi Yochanan says he could. Kashna Dodi, this is a contradiction. Rabbi Yochanan, Elav Shmamina, Kan Bistam, Kan B'Mefarish Shmamina. This proves without a doubt that it all depends on if he planned to be makriv everything one day, then it's one carbon, there's no problem about Tosef. Or if he bedafka wanted to have 2 days so that it can be makriv the Chagiga twice, that's not allowed. It's Marnami Amar Absham Ba'aba Amar B'Yochanan Loshanu Ella Shaloi Gomar Avol Gomar Chayzer Umakriv. What does it mean Loi Gomar? My Gomar Ilem Gomar Carbonoisa. What do you mean? If it means Loshanu Avol Gomar, if he used up his carbonos Chayzer Umakriv. How could you be chayzer makriv if you already used up your karbanos? Eloim gomer kamilois of my makriv. Ella, what does it mean shalai gomer? It means ella shalai gomer hayoim avol gomer hayoim chayzer makriv. When do you say that you're not allowed to be makriv the other 5 tomorrow? That's if you still have time. It was loy gomer hayoim. There was still time to be makriv the second 5, but you purposely wanted to wait till tomorrow. That's a problem about Tosef. Avol gomer hayoim. If the reason why you weren't makriv al 10 on the first day is because you ran out of time, that's not Baltoisib, Chayzu Makriv, you could be Makriv the rest of them tomorrow. Okay, let's stop here and we will be Makriv the rest of them Masechta tomorrow. Okay, have a wonderful, wonderful day. Zareinu v'chaspeinu Yarbeh Kachol.